Breaking Bad is hands down one of the best pieces of television ever created, but even still, it falls victim to what I call the anti-hero paradox. Now, the anti-hero paradox is not an uncommon problem to have. Shows like Mad Men, films like Fight Club, even video games like Grand Theft Auto, all are plagued by this issue. But what exactly causes this paradox? And why is it such a serious problem? Well, let's rewind a sec and start off with a definition. Anti-heroes are central characters in fiction that lack conventional heroic traits. More often than not, stories focusing on this type of character are designed to critique the more problematic aspects of their behavior. The paradox, however, is caused by the fact that centering these people within a narrative, especially in a medium like film and television, inherently glorifies the character and undercuts any intended critique the storytellers are trying to make. Take The Wolf of Wall Street, for example. The film is meant to condemn the corrupting power of money, showing how excessive wealth can tempt people into casting aside their morality. However, the movie spends most of its runtime indulging in the exact same vices that it claims to critique. Let's look at one of the scenes involving Margot Robbie. And yes, I do mean that scene involving Margot Robbie. Despite beginning the film married to Kristen Milioti, DiCaprio's character happily turns to infidelity once he meets Harley Quinn. Narratively, the decision to be unfaithful to his wife is meant to show us just how immoral the character's lifestyle has made him. We should hate the protagonist for what he's doing, but look at how the film chooses to present this moment.
That's it, you're leaving. Don't get involved. Go home to your wife.
And that, kids, is how I met your mother.
Like the protagonist, the camera is utterly enraptured with Margot Robbie's physical appearance. Rather than showing disgust for DiCaprio or empathy for his wife, the movie instead is sympathetic with the main character. What the filmmaking implicitly tells the audience is, just look at her. Can you blame the guy? And this extends to the other illicit activities throughout the film as well. Sure, the narrative ultimately points to drugs and alcohol being a part of the main character's downfall, but for most of the movie, partaking in these activities is made to look incredibly glamorous. Now, some might say that this is an unavoidable issue in a visual medium, so it's unfair to hold it against a project like Breaking Bad. And just a few days ago, I would have agreed with that statement, right up until I saw the series finale of Barry on HBO. That's why today, I'd like to put the first and last episodes of both shows head to head in order to figure out why one project overcomes the anti-hero paradox and the other becomes its victim. The pilot episode for Barry and Breaking Bad are both incredibly similar. We follow an unassuming main character who is or becomes involved in a life of crime. We watch as they sleepwalk through a mundane and perhaps meaningless existence. And by the end of the pilot, each of them possesses a reinvigorated passion for life. Both pilots are excellent examples of how to make an audience emotionally invest in anti-heroes. You focus on the ways in which they're similar to everyday people so that the more extraordinary and often negative parts of their lives are easier to accept. But despite their similarities, the central questions at the heart of each project are quite different. Watching Walter White become Heisenberg forces the audience to ponder whether everybody has it within themselves to break bad. Meanwhile, since Barry is a criminal from the very beginning of the show, the focus is on redemption and how much a person can do wrong while still being able to make it right. And this is where the paradox really comes into play. Over the course of 5 seasons, Breaking Bad takes us through the rise and fall of Walter White's empire. We see him evolve from a meek chemistry teacher into a hardened criminal.
I am the one who knocks.
And watch as that evolution costs Walter everything. With how far Heisenberg falls, you might almost think that the show isn't guilty of glorifying its anti-hero. But you'd be wrong. Look at the final episode. Walter White is not in a great place. His body is withered, his spirit is tired, and his death seems inevitable. However, he's also given a chance to tie up just about every loose end that he left behind. He finds a way to pass on his money to family. He gets to say goodbye to his daughter. He frees Jesse, and he even makes sure that the creation and sale of his product will cease permanently. The show concedes that Walter is ultimately a bad guy, but he is rewarded with closure. Legally, he's a criminal, but narratively, there's a sort of redemption found in death. The show is asking you to empathize with him until his very last breath. Barry, on the other hand, kind of does the opposite. The dark comedy crime drama starts off like any conventional anti-hero story. It wants the audience to like Barry and see the good in him. It makes you hopeful that he can turn his life around and walk the straight and narrow, even though the series forces him into more and more terrible situations. But as the show continues, things start to change. We're initially led to believe that Barry is only a hitman because he was pushed into the line of work by his dad's friend Fuchs, who consistently manipulates Barry throughout the first season. However, we're slowly fed more and more evidence that Barry's criminal tendencies are in fact a sign of who he really is.
You are like the most evil guy I know, man.
At one point, he and his friend from the Marines are the only survivors of a job that went south unexpectedly. While a part of him wants to protect his buddy, the moment he threatens to turn himself in to the police, Barry becomes furious and doesn't hesitate to silence him permanently. At the end of the first season, Barry does the same thing to Janice Moss because she discovers what he really is. A killer. In both of these examples, even though he isn't happy with the situation, he prioritizes his own happiness and safety over human life. What Barry struggles to admit to himself is that he has agency over these situations. The profound damage he does to other people's lives is a cold and calculated choice. But despite all that, can he still be redeemed? Well, initially, it seems like the answer is yes, at least from the show's perspective. The last shot of season 1 is Barry getting back into bed after hiding Janice's body and saying to himself,
Starting now.
Implying that he thinks he can be a good person moving forward as long as his sins remain in the past. But they don't. Barry proceeds to do worse and worse things over the course of seasons 2, 3, and 4, cementing the fact that despite what he tells himself, he is not a good person. However, unlike Breaking Bad, Barry acknowledges this on a fundamental level. This might be the weirdest compliment I've ever given a show, but Barry actively stops being fun to watch after season 2. The wacky comedic exchanges become far less frequent, the stakes become much more immediate, and the show starts to hold its characters accountable. In season 1, we want to believe Barry is a normal guy, and Barry wants us to believe that
We're the same.
But the rest of this series actively reminds us that
We're not the same, Barry, and you're a murderer.
And unlike other anti-hero narratives, this show actually sticks to its guns. By the time the final season rolls around, Barry isn't even the main character of the show. Instead, it becomes an ensemble drama that examines all the lives Barry has destroyed directly or indirectly. We see the toll his psychopathy has taken on others, and the story spotlights their experiences and emotions rather than Barry's. Looking at the show's finale, we see just how committed to this approach the writers really are. In the midst of trying to apologize and turn himself in, Barry is shot abruptly, ending his story right then and there. The camera doesn't even focus on his body, but rather the empty expression of Gene Cousineau. Barry's last words aren't significant.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't find redemption through fatherhood. It's even unclear whether he gets revenge on Fuchs or not. The writers don't reward Barry in any way because he isn't the hero of this story. He's the villain. And looking back, this was always true. The unhinged psychopath that Barry becomes was always lying in wait. The audience just wasn't ready to accept it, which is why the show eventually does so on your behalf. The bold choice to decenter Barry from the narrative has a profound effect on the show, and I honestly don't know if it's good or bad from a storytelling standpoint. It's meta commentary on a level usually reserved for Rian Johnson movies, and just like Glass Onion, whether you enjoy it or not is gonna come down to personal preference. All I can say for certain is that as a piece of art, Barry does what Breaking Bad never could. If you like this video, click here to see how Rian Johnson crafted the perfect anti-mystery twice. Let me know which TV show you prefer, and subscribe for more video essays. I'm Dylan, and this has been The Writer's Block.